All right, this will be my review in a way on the podcasts that were listening to This American Life. First off, I'd like to say that these stories were very eye-opening because you could have easily convinced me that they were from a 60s era civil rights movement stories, stuff like that. We see a lot from that era, and having to still see that today is a little insane that people are still like this. And it's interesting to see how people still act like this. So what I got from that was obviously the poor communities create poor education systems. So bad schools in a sense. You don't get high quality of teachers. You don't get a high quality of resources. So in a way, you are setting students up to fail. When it comes from that, you see low graduation rates, and in that way, those kids go back into the cycle of poverty, not being able to get out until a chance, like in the first story of the Normandy School District, happens, right? The school fails in a way that, disaster ended up being something great for those families and those students wanting to get a better education, wanting to succeed in life. They ended up going to a new school district that was predominantly white, had better funding, better teachers, so they got a better education out of that. When it comes to affecting children in each circumstances, right? So the poorer kids and families were excited for the new opportunity. Who wouldn't be, right? Newer school, new teachers, a great chance to learn and succeed. Those white families who were already there were clearly unhappy, as we saw and heard from the podcast. We have parents saying that the poor kids are going to bring drug and violence, and they want drug-sniffing dogs, metal detectors, because they felt their kids were going to be unsafe. We obviously see some biases that were already being held from those parents beforehand, which is not a good look for the school district when you want it. In a way, the school district wants it to be inviting and new and open to schools, which they did with having the cheer team out on the first day when the kids got bussed over. And, we saw some nice stories come out of that, making new friends, sitting at lunch tables, talking to new people, and all that good stuff. Now, with the shared learning part, as a future educator, what can we do, right? We don't judge a book by its cover, obviously. Kids who want to succeed and want to learn and want to become better, they will take the steps necessary to do so. It's not like, oh, they're from a poor black neighborhood, they will never be good. That's wrong. People who want something will get it through, determination, responsibility, efforts, things like that. They will achieve their goal. So, and from the first podcast as well, we see the story of Rihanna, who's bullied on her first day, racial slurs, name calling, all that bad stuff. She was called dumb. The other student, in a way, was provoking a fight with her. Later on, we hear that, Rihanna was asked by the teacher in the class to help the student who was bullying her in math. So clearly, who's a dumb person here, right? So Rihanna, was an adult about it and helped the student with math, right? Which is good for her. It makes her look good. It doesn't make her look like the bad guy at all, which is good because we're trying to set a good, pre-notion for those kids coming from the poorer schools. So beyond the educational setting, students at home in impoverished areas, we see that they lack resources, time, and support. So in a way, we notice that, that's what these kids need, and one of the only ways they can get them is being in school. School's, 8-hour long days. So you need that support, you need that good teaching, you need all this positive energy to come out of something like that. And in a lot of cases in poor school districts, you don't get that. You get lack of funding, not properly educated teachers, which then sets the students back, which is not ideal in that situation. And now going through the link that was provided, to able to look up, our own schools in the district, I decided to look up the high school I went to. Now, they had a total enrollment of 1,112 kids, right? 595 of them were Hispanic, 411 were white, totaling out to 1,006 out of the 1,112 were a majority of two races. Personally, to me, I never saw a problem with it. We were all pretty integrated in one way or another. It was a small town, so there's nothing really to make of it. But kind of seeing those statistics, and it was interesting to see how diverse we really were, or how not diverse we really were in a way. So like overall, throughout throughout the whole podcast and stuff, it's really interesting to see how things like this are still going on, and it comes down to funding of schools pretty much. Like, can schools afford good teachers? Can schools afford proper resources? And in poor areas, a lot of times, if not all the time, they can't, which is not great for kids who want to receive that higher education, want to go above and beyond. Like, was it like Maria and Rihanna in the stories of the podcast? You know, two students who want to do better, who want to achieve greater things, but were unable to due to prior holdbacks of the poorer schools in the Normandy district. And, you know, when that failed, they were able to get the opportunity to move on and enhance their education. So, in the end, it's really eye-opening and interesting to see how all this stuff is happening still in the modern day. You know, these stories come from 2013, 2014, 2015, frequently fairly new, right? And it's crazy. It's like, how soon are we going to see a change in something like this? And it kind of all comes down to funding in the end. Realistically, is where can we allocate the money to provide better education?